Good morning again. Great to see you. Thanks for having me back into your home again. I'd like to tell you today about an uncle of mine, my mother's oldest brother, C.B. Jones. His name was actually Carl Brown Jones. His mother, their mother, was a Brown before she married, and she named Carl Brown. Everyone called him C.B. He was quite a character. He, for many, many years, didn't hold a regular job. He always had money because he would do, I don't know that he ever did anything crooked, but he would do things to come up with money. He was quite good at several things. He did not like to work regular. He didn't like to get up early. And somehow he was allergic to work, I guess. He referred to himself as an entrepreneur. Most everybody else referred to him as a loafer. I've heard my grandfather say he had five sons, that he fussed on CB more than the other four all put together, because my granddad was a carpenter, and all of them grew up doing carpenter work, helping Grandpa. And CB would be daydreaming, or he would lay down his hammer to watch a bird fly by or something. And my grandfather said he had to fuss on him more than all the rest of them put together. Well, as I say, CB was good at a lot of things. He could make a good living as a door-to-door salesman. He sold, at one time, World Book encyclopedias. He sold housewares, pots and pans, things like that. He was very good at both of them. He just didn't stay with it very long because it was just required more than he wanted to do. Another trait that he had, he could walk out and look at what we call a tract of timber, a acreage with trees on it, and he could look at it and tell you about what it was worth. He could buy timber. My granddaddy would loan him money sometimes to enable him to buy. He could go out and buy a tract of timber, hold it a few days, and sell it to someone else and make money on it. He was good at it. He didn't do that very often, but when he got to needing money, sometimes he would buy a tract of timber and sell it and make enough money. He didn't live extravagantly. He took care of his money because he wanted it to last, so he didn't have to work. Well, this is many years ago, before I was born, that where they lived was in DeKalb County, Alabama. The east side of DeKalb County is also the Georgia state line. He had a friend over in Georgia that called him one day and asked him would he be interested in buying a tract of timber. He had some timber he wanted to sell. He didn't want to sell the land, just the timber. And CB told him, sure, I'd be interested in it. Man said, well, could you come tomorrow? Well, CB made a big deal of looking at his calendar, which he didn't have anything going. He wasn't planning on doing anything. But he looks at his calendar and he tells the man, yes, tomorrow will be fine. What time do you want me to come? The man said, well, it's pretty warm up in the day, so let's go early. He said, could you be here at 6 o'clock? Well, CB thinks, yeah, I'll be there at 6 o'clock. Later on in the day, he gets to thinking about this. Georgia is in Eastern time. Alabama's in Central time. 6 o'clock at that man's house is going to be 5 o'clock at CB's house. Not only that, he doesn't even like to get up at 6 o'clock Central time. More like 8 or 9 o'clock suits him better. And he keeps studying better, and he thinks, I'll go on tonight. He goes to bed early, so I'll drive over tonight, and I'll park in his driveway. He won't know I'm there till in the morning. When he gets up, he'll see my car. He'll come out and he'll wake me up. I'll eat breakfast with him. and then we'll go look at the timber. CB was always finagling, and he was always ready for a free meal. So he thinks this is going to work great. Well, where they lived was on Lookout Mountain. If you go off the state line right along in there, runs right on top of Lookout Mountain. You go off the east side of the mountain, you're in Georgia. You go off the west side of the mountain, you're in Alabama. At the foot of the mountain on the Georgia side, there's a small river. It's not any bigger than the Calf Killer. But in times of heavy rain, it can flood. About every 4 or 5 miles, there's a road goes off the mountain. Every one of them crosses the river on bridges. Sometimes some of those bridges wash out. Well, along in the afternoon, late, it begins to rain. CB said, well, that's not going to be a big issue. I can make it in the rain. He waits till about 9 o'clock that night, and he starts out. It's raining a lot harder by then. It's raining very hard. CB is going across the mountain. He knows he's over into Georgia, and it's beginning to get to where it's raining so hard he can't see the road very well. These were mostly all gravel roads back then, and he's concerned about getting off the road, getting his car stuck, and he's concerned, you know. It's raining hard. And suddenly he sees something in his headlights that he's not sure. Maybe he's hallucinating. There is a girl, young lady, standing on the side of the road in a white wedding dress. Full dress, long wedding dress, soaking wet. Long black hair, and it's just hanging down, soaking wet. He thinks, oh my goodness, that girl's going to drown out here in this kind of weather. So he pulls up beside of her, opens his door and says, honey, get in this car, get out of the rain. She's kind of bewildered looking, she's not sure. He says, get in, get in. You'll take pneumonia out in the rain like that, get in. So she gets in the car, and she manages to get all of her dress pulled into the car with her. And CB says, what are you doing out on the night like this? Well, my friend and I went down the mountain, and we were going to cross the river to go over to look at a church over in the valley. And we didn't realize the middle section of the bridge had washed out. We couldn't see it. My friend was driving. When we drove across the bridge, the car went off into the river, and I think she drowned. And I'm trying to get back home. CB said, where do you live? I live right out this road right out here. He said, well, I'm headed for, he told her where, over in Georgia. And she said, you can't get there down this road because that bridge is washed out. You'll need to go down to the next road, and I can tell you how to get there. And he said, well, I appreciate it because I'm not familiar with these roads. She said, and you'll go by my house if you go that way. CB said, good, I'll be glad to take you home. Well, she's shivering. CB has an overcoat in the back seat. He was planning on using that to cover up with while he slept in his car after a while. He reaches over the seat and gets his overcoat, puts it around the lady, which helps her. She quits shivering so bad. As they go down the road, and it's still raining cats and dogs, I mean raining hard. Pretty soon his headlights, in a curve there's a house sitting up a little bit above the road. Very nice house. She says, that's my house, that's where my parents live. And so CB pulls into the driveway, and he says, can you get in? All right, oh yeah, I'll be fine. He said, well, I can help you. No, I'm fine. She gets out. He watches her. She makes it up to the porch and goes in, opens the door and goes on in. He turns around and heads on down the road, and she's giving him good directions. He manages to get down the mountain, get across the river, and goes on to his friend's house, gets some sleep. He's not as comfortable as he would have been because she kept his overcoat. He says, I don't really want to lose that overcoat, but, you know, the girl really needed it. And if I go back that way, I'll stop and see if I can get my coat back. So he goes on, the man wakes him up, they eat breakfast together, they get out and CB buys the timber, pays the man for it. He starts back home. When he gets up on the mountain, he remembers where to turn, and he turns and he goes by and he recognizes the house. He's pretty sure. The girl has told him that her name is Janet Brown, because when she said that, he thought he might be kin to her, but they didn't find any common relations where they might be kin folks. But he stops, he goes to the door, he knocks. An older lady comes to the door, and he says, pardon me, ma'am, said, is this where Janet Brown lives? The lady looks at him like, you know, you got to be crazy or something, man. Gives him the strangest look, and she says, why do you want to know? And he said, well, I picked her up over here on the mountain last night and brought her home, and I loaned her my overcoat because she was so wet, and I wanted to get my coat back. No, you did not pick Janet Brown up last night on this mountain. Yes, ma'am, I did. And he said, I'm not wanting to disturb you or anything, but she has my coat, and if it's convenient, I'd like to pick it up. And I'll go on. No, you didn't pick Janet up. You've not seen Janet. And he said, ma'am, I know what I'm telling you. I picked Janet Brown up last night over here. I don't know the name of which road I was on, but we came back by here and I let her out. No, you did not. Listen to me, man. Janet Brown has been dead 5 years. You did not pick her up. He said, I know I did. And she said, listen, fella, she's buried here behind the house in a little family cemetery. Come on and I'll show you her tombstone. You can see that you're wrong. Well, they start around the house. CB's very bewildered. He don't know what to make of all this. The lady says Janet was intending to marry, and she wanted to marry over in the valley, the church that we used to go to before we moved up here. And she wasn't sure how big it was. Her and a friend started to go over there one night. It was raining, and they started to go over there just to get an idea of how big the church was. They didn't realize the bridge was out. They crossed the bridge. The car ran off the bridge, and they drowned. That's been 5 years ago. Matter of fact, that was 5 years ago today. CB's still very confused. And then she says, this may sound strange to you, but we had already bought Janet's wedding dress, and she liked it so well that we buried her in that wedding dress. That's probably the only person that's ever been buried in a wedding dress, but she was. Oh boy, that throws a red flag then, because CB had not told her what the girl was wearing. So he's very alarmed. They walk up to the tombstone, and the lady says, see, Janet Brown, it had her birth date. Her death date was 5 years ago from that day. CB's not even looking at that, because draped across that tombstone is his overcoat. And we thank you. We'll see you in a few days.